right, so in this episode, we've got the lovely Lisa who is coming on to talk to us about nutrition. But obviously, like I said to Lisa before, she's probably best to introduce herself and explain what it is she actually does. So hello, Lisa.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm a nutritional therapist and a health coach. I'm a female hormone expert, and I'm recently a reflux specialist as well.
Did you say reflux there?
Yeah, reflux.
Oh, okay.
The reason being is just about all the clients who come to see me have got problems with reflux or are on PPIs. So it's a really big deal. So I've just finished completing a reflux specialist course so I can really help women and anybody else who comes to see
Mhm.
me to actually come off the PPIs or manage their digestive symptoms because it's
Mhm.
much bigger than you think it is.
Yeah. And so would you say that because obviously with the hormone thing, is it mostly women that obviously come to you for help, or do you get a lot of men coming to you as well?
It's predominantly women,
Mhm.
but I've currently got 5 men on my books,
Mhm.
so I don't say no to men. I'm very much of the opinion that it doesn't matter what your health concerns are, that I want to help because I myself have had so many brick walls through the GP and not got the answers that I want to help people find those answers because it can be transformative to your life. It can make
Mhm.
such a difference.
Yeah. And I think when you mentioned GP there, like I'm in a similar boat where I've been at the GP in the past. They've told us information that wasn't really correct, but thankfully I've went down a holistic route and kind of got a bit of help that way. And I also know people who've done the same. So now that's why I'm more into this holistic, looking at our food, looking at how much sleep we've got. And I think that's something that's probably becoming more apparent, isn't it? That people aren't getting the answers or they can't even get an appointment with a doctor. But even
Yes.
when you do, they don't say to you, right, let's look at your diet.
No,
Let's
they
look at your
they never ask.
deficiencies.
No,
No?
never ask. What are you eating? When are you eating? What's your sleep like? What are your stress levels like? And that's partly because GPs don't get they get up to 10 minutes, and you're lucky if you get
Yeah.
that with them. But also when GPs train out of their 7 years, they get something like 5 hours training on nutrition.
Yeah.
So they're trained to look at the symptoms and match that up with a medication, and then off you toddle. Whereas what I do is I look to the root cause of what your symptoms are. So that medication you get from your GP is like a stick and plaster.
Mhm.
So what I do is I look at your whole life and your health history from birth, because every time something happens to you, it sort of adds to that jigsaw puzzle and it compounds. So I can look back over your lifetime and say, right, what's been going on, what struggles you've had, what medications you've been on, what antibiotics you've been on, how you've eaten, what your stress levels were like, what your environment that you grew up in. Take all of this into consideration to see how you're presenting with your symptoms that you've got now.
Mhm.
And also, I also look at a 5-day food diary as well, so I can get a feel for what you're eating. I mean, some clients try to think, oh, well, when they complete this, I'm gonna sort of rosy it up a little bit. But that's not the aim of the looking at your
Mhm.
plan. You could be somebody who eats McDonald's all day long, and I don't really care. What I
Mhm.
want to know is what your starting point is, because that tells me how that matches up with your symptoms. So if you
Mhm.
sort of embellish your food, I can see that, oh, well, that doesn't match what your symptoms are telling me. So I can tell
Mhm.
it's not right, that's not how you normally eat. But I look at that and I sort of delve really deeply into finding that root cause so we can then work on how to help the body heal itself through nutrition and lifestyle, and really get you the health that you're supposed to have, that you were meant to have. And GPs don't get that. As I say, they're used to doing the stick and plaster and sending you off your way. But when you get that medication has side effects and usually leads on to something else
Mhm.
manifesting elsewhere in the body. So it can drive your symptoms much deeper.
Yeah.
GPs just aren't always the answer.
Mhm. And like you said a word before, like the plaster it, and that's exactly what it is. It's masking it. So
Mhm.
God knows what else is happening. It's not actually healing it, which could ultimately make it worse if it's
Yeah,
left.
because what it does is it drives it deeper. So you could have, say, asthma, and you end up taking your inhalers. But what that does is it drives it deeper, and it might come out as eczema on your arm because it's still in the body, and the body's trying to contain it and do the best that it can to heal. But if you're not eating well and not nourishing the body, then it will come out in other ways because you haven't addressed those root causes. You haven't addressed those fundamental nutritional deficiencies, which mean because your body does thousands of processes every single day just to keep functioning. And if you're somebody who deliberately doesn't eat green vegetables, let's say, so you could be deficient in magnesium. So magnesium is needed for over 300 different enzymes and functions in the body. So your body will manage it up to a point, but then it will say, hang on, enough's enough. You really haven't fed me this. I've been trying to tell you that you need these because I've been trying to tell you you've got a headache and I want you to take some magnesium, but you've ignored the headache, taken the paracetamol, but you haven't resolved the problem. So I'm going to say something else is not going to work properly because I need you to listen. So your body's always talking to you all of the time, every day. But we've got so used to just picking up a paracetamol or an ibuprofen to sort it out.
To shut it up.
Yeah, so we can carry
Go
on with
away.
our lives. We're all just too busy. And I think that's part of the problem as well, is we're too busy to actually stop and eat well. We'll reach for all the convenience food and all the processed foods because it helps us to keep busy.
Yeah.
Being busy and on the go all of the time keeps the cortisol levels raised, which then causes a whole host of problems in the body. And it just derails all your hormones as well as other things. So going back to the original question, yes, I do see men, because men have problems with their health just as much as women do.
Yeah.
Have more hormonal problems because there's more hormones to take into account. Whereas with men, it's just the testosterone.
Yeah. And you were just talking about there about like convenience. I actually wrote a note down about to say like what are the costs of convenience, and you've kind of covered them a little bit there.
Oh,
Like
it's huge.
people doing this fast food thing because it's convenient, because it's easier, but then you've just like listed the rest of problems from that, like the stress of like being constantly busy, and then the lack of nutrition and everything. And that's one of the biggest things I think, that people are not making the time, because they probably say they don't have the time, but if they looked, they probably could make the time to learn a little bit more, to probably prep their meals for the week, for example. But because it's easier to just bang in, some chicken nuggets and chips and a pizza, or order a takeaway, which a lot of people are doing now, which they never used to do as much. Like when I was younger, it was like a treat.
Yeah.
Whereas now, and I'm guilty as well, like we've done it, where people are getting takeaways all of the time as well. So like there's so many people just not getting the right nutrition, but nobody's telling them like it's important. The doctors aren't saying that. So it's something that
No.
I want to raise awareness of and say, like, you need to be aware of why your body's not working, instead of just going and taking that quick tablet, convenience again, to kind of shut it up.
Yeah, and people have also started to buy the supplements that are in the supermarkets and in some of the high street stores, thinking, right, okay, I feel this, all right, let's stick some supplements in, that'll sort me out. So people are looking for the quick fix. They're not realizing that they need to do the work. They need to heal the body. It's them who are putting the wrong things into the body. So if you think about it, your body is a car and it takes petrol, but if you start putting diesel in for a while, it's going to splutter and just stop working at some point. So, and you do an MOT on your car to keep that working, but we never look after ourselves in that way. But with all these fast foods, they are just loaded with rubbish. There's no nutrients in there. They've got really inflammatory ingredients in there, highly processed, trans and saturated fats in there, which block the cells. So I always start with this analogy with my clients. If you think of the cell like this, and it's got a nice flexible membrane made of healthy fats, what it does is it lets the nutrients in when you eat, and then it lets the toxins out. But when we eat processed foods and we eat processed fats, this soft, nice, flexible, fatty membrane becomes hot, stiffened. What it means is the nutrients can't get in because there's no flexibility, but the toxins can't get out and they're stuck in there. So those toxins, we are holding the toxins in our body, and that's what's keeping us unwell. So if we learn to sort of move away from the fast food and the processed foods and the convenience foods and going back to eating how, say, our grandmothers did, and proper dinners with lots of vegetables in there and from scratch, you'd be amazed at the difference that makes to your health and how you feel and how your body actually can function because you're giving it the nutrients that it needs.
Yeah. And I think sometimes as well, like if I've been tired in the past before I knew what I know now, and don't get us wrong, I still catch myself doing this. When I'm feeling tired, and you reach for the comfort foods as well, because you need that quick sugar hit
Yeah.
to make you feel better, don't you? And then that kind of like can just be a nightmare in itself.
It just
Then you
starts
just
that blood
repeat.
sugar. Yeah, once you're on that blood sugar roller coaster, if you start the day like that, you've got no hope for the rest of the day because you're in that cycle. So you reach for the sugary foods, the sugary breakfast, the cereals, the smoothies with all the juices and the sugar-laden things. That gives you that high. But what it does is it gives you that blood sugar crash, so you really drop down really low. And then you reach for the next sugary food or the next slice of bread or the next cake or biscuit or whatever it is to get you back up again. But then you're in this perpetual motion when you're swinging from one extreme to the other. And you just want to be sort of going like this in this nice, because every time you eat, you'll get this little blood sugar spike, but it's just contained in this little band. But when you have the really sugary foods, it sort of fluctuates from one side to the other. And that's what you need to avoid. And that's why we're all feeling exhausted all the time. I know when I've been out and I've had a piece of cake, I know I'm going to feel tired and on the floor later on.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to hit me. And it's learning to understand what those foods are going to do in your body so you can make that informed choice. So myself as a nutritionist, I still eat those things, but I eat those things in moderation. And it's not about never eating them again. It's about that 80-20 rule where if you can feed your body really well for 80% of the time, on that 20% when you're going out for a dinner or you're going out with friends, your body can cope and bounce back from that. It's not going to bore you for days afterwards. But most people eat the other way around.
Yeah, I know. And I think this is the thing as well, always people are like, oh no, if I don't want to like stop doing what I'm doing because I really like, this type of food or I like this takeaway, but realizing that you don't have to cut it out. It's just kind of having a balance, but a one that tips you more to like eating healthy so you're prepared. And your body can, I guess, like handle those toxins that you were talking about as well, to get rid of those toxins because you're creating a healthy environment for your cells and stuff. So there was something that popped in my head and then it's went out my head now. But what would you say, it'll come back to us. What would you say is the best way to wake up in the morning? What, like for your health, so you don't get those cravings? Like, is it the protein that people should be going for breakfast?
Yeah, protein makes a difference. The protein takes the longest to digest in the body. It takes the body the most energy to digest, which is why it keeps you full for longer. That's where that phrase comes from. So if you have a breakfast full of protein, 25, 30 grams of protein, you will find that you will not need the mid-morning snack. You'll be able to go from one meal to the other because you're full. You're not having that blood sugar crash. So I like for breakfast, I like to have oats or overnight oats, but it's a small amount of oats because oats are a high glycemic index food. So even though they're really good for you, they can start that blood sugar roller coaster. So if you pair them with some protein, so I add in chia seeds, hemp seeds, other seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, some nuts in there. I add in my berries. I love blueberries, so I have frozen blueberries constantly stacked in my freezer. That's what I put in there. And I've put a light drizzle of peanut butter in, or I mix the milk in with a little bit of really clean protein powder, and that means that is a nice protein-based breakfast. If you're somebody who starts off with a smoothie, you could be making things worse. For all a smoothie can be quite healthy, it can also be quite triggering for a blood sugar roller coaster, because people tend to just put fruit in their smoothie, like drinking sugar.
Yeah.
Because you've started the digestive process by putting it in the blender, so your body's got less work to digest it. So therefore the glucose from the fruit and the fructose hits the bloodstream much faster. So if you're somebody who has a smoothie, add in some protein powder, add in some chia seeds, some hemp seeds, some nuts, things, and have it that way. But just smoothies are really tricky because they can be loaded with calories by the time you add everything in, and end up being this huge meal and far more calories in there than you would expect if you put it into a bowl and ate it that way.
It came back to us when you were talking about blueberries, by the way. I was going to say. So I think we've got to a place where I think people are eating for pleasure, not to fuel their body as well. So when you said the blueberries, so I used to be so fussy and not like textured things. So like if you had a yogurt, I couldn't have little bits of fruit in because it would just make us want to gag. So what I do is I'll have like a strawberry. I can eat strawberries on their own, but I would dip it in, like have me Greek yogurt and just dip it in so the fruit's not soggy. But blueberries, I started by really not liking them. I'd cut them in half and I would have to mix it with me Greek yogurt, and just when I chewed it, it was like felt really funny. But then the more you do it, your palate changes, doesn't it? So I started getting used to them because obviously in my head I'm thinking I've been eating for pleasure for too long, and I need to just eat to fuel my body and change my body and change the way I feel about these foods. So I think some people might go, oh, well, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't. There's a way to get it in your body, isn't there? There is
Yeah, I
ways to
mean,
get it in.
if you're somebody who eats a lot of processed foods and ready-made meals, then you're going to struggle eating a plate of broccoli, a plate of green beans, whatever it is, those, because they're not highly processed. Things which are processed have got added sugar in, added salt in, and they just really make them super palatable. So when you go to eat the natural foods in their natural state, you're so underwhelmed by them because you're waiting for your taste buds to come alight with them. Your taste buds have been so saturated with these high intensity flavors and tastes that you're just not going to feel happy. But once you come off those and start bringing in the vegetables and the unprocessed foods in there, your taste buds do change. You do. I've had clients who have started like that, who have come to see me, and everything is heavily processed. And then there's one client I have in mind, a lovely lady came to me, lots of processed stuff, but she'd like to go out. She was retired and she was going out with her girlfriends regularly, several times a week. And she says, you'll never guess. She says, I'm asking for broccoli on my plate. And when I couldn't get it, I'm missing it. So she
Yeah.
says, she says, I would never have believed it, but your taste buds change over time. And it's just a case of just sort of starting slowly and bringing things in and just getting used to it. And getting the real taste of food again, rather than this hyper palatable food, and just retraining the taste buds. And you'll find that there's foods that are salty or sweet naturally, and you've just never noticed it before.
Yeah. So if somebody, say, was listening to this, or what, I was going to come to you and said, right, well, my diet's been really bad, I've got, certain symptoms, and enough's enough. Like, what would the protocol be if the company asked you for help and they hired your help? What would the first steps that you would take them through?
Right. So the first thing that I do with everybody, because everybody's different, and I could have two people sitting in front of me with identical symptoms, but their protocols would be slightly different because it depends what else is going on for you in your body. So everything I do is unique to you in your symptoms. So the first thing I do is to look at this in-depth health questionnaire. So it takes you from birth to where you are now, so I can see your whole health history and understand what's going on there. I look at your 5-day food diary, as we've said, and then we work on what you would say your 2 to 3 top health goals would be. So it might be that you're fatigued, completely fatigued and on the floor, so you want to work on that. You might have migraines to go with that fatigue. And then you might say, I've got a bit of eczema on my elbow, I'd like to clear that up. So the first thing I do with everybody is get the foundations of nutrition right. Some people come to me and say, well, I want some testing, I want to know what's going on. And what I say to most people is these functional testing, they're far more in-depth than what the GP does. The GP tends to do surface level, and if that surface level says everything's fine, they don't dig any deeper. But functional testing I have access to really deep dives, but it can be pricey. And I don't want people to dive in and pay £300, £400 for a test where my protocol would be the same without it. So I'd rather you spent that money on doing the program with me and get some real results. So first thing we do is sort out the foundations, get everything right. So are you drinking enough water? Are you getting enough vegetables in your diet? Are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough healthy fats? Let's reduce the processed foods. We also look at your sleep habits, your stress levels. So we take all that into account, because it's not just what's on your plate that affects your nutrition and your health. It can be other things. That's where the health coaching comes inside. So the nutrition tells you what to eat. The health coaching that I sort of incorporate into that tells you how we're going to get this implemented in your life, because everybody's too busy, dashing from here and there, children to deal with, elderly parents to deal with, really intense jobs. So it's looking about what ways we can implement that work for you. So I might say to you, one thing to work on, but that might not be applicable to the next person because it doesn't fit into their life. So it's finding ways that it works for them, get that implemented. And what you find when you get the foundations put right, a lot of symptoms start to die away. So it could be things like the fatigue starts to die away because we're balancing the blood sugars. So, and then we start getting some better sleep. So symptoms start to reduce. And sometimes that can be as early as 2 or 3 weeks. And then we can see actually it's cleared the wood from the trees, and we can actually see what the real core issues are. And at that point, it might need some extra testing, or it might just need some specific work in a specific area. So it's kind of judging with every client, because every client's different, and every client goes at their own pace to implement the changes. So everything is bespoke to that person who comes and sees me. People don't realize, I mean, I have conversations with people, and when they ask me what I do, they say, oh, but I don't need a nutritionist, I eat really well. Every client has said that when they've come to work with me. And every client, when I've looked at their food diary, has been way off what they think is a healthy diet. And people, when they say, oh, well, I don't need a nutritionist, and I say, okay, then is everything fine? Oh no, I've been the doctors. I'm type 2 diabetic, so I've got medication for that. I'm on this medication and this medication. The doctor says that's just me, so that's me for the rest of my life. I'm always going to take this medication. And it's not the way. It's not the case. Doesn't matter what your GP said. There's always a way to improve how you feel. So we may not be able to get you off your medication, but we may be able to ease the symptoms. So when people come to me and they're on polymorph pharmacy, which is when they're on several different medications, I work alongside their GP or their consultants and help get other things into control and get their bodies in their best shape, get the liver working properly so it can detoxify toxins properly. Balance your hormones, get your sleep working properly, and get all these different things in place, and they can feel amazing. And sometimes that leads to not needing that medication anymore, because we've looked at the root cause and put the missing jigsaw pieces back in there and fueled the body with the right nutrients that it needs.
And that's just prompted us to thinking what I was going to ask. I'm a bit brain foggy today. But basically, when you ask them what you said, you ask them what the diet's like, and they think they eat okay, but then you've realised they don't. what I was thinking before you said that was, it's when again? No. I'm having one of those days. See, my nutrition has been a bit up and down as well. This is
Maybe your
why.
hormones bouncing.
I know. And it's just when I'm behind again. Oh yeah. So I'd seen this post a while ago, and it was basically, if somebody tells you that they're depressed, have you slept well? And they're like, no. Have you, ate this? No. Have you ate this? So people are forgetting the basic needs. I don't know why I kept forgetting that. But I think people are forgetting that there's basic things that they should be doing that they probably know, but they're not taken seriously because they're not fully understanding. Because again, back to, that's not the way they're being conditioned. The condition to go to the doctors and just get something to kind of mask it and not realize that it's their responsibility for their health.
Yeah,
So,
people are quite quick to push their health onto somebody else and just say, it's not my responsibility. You're supposed to go to the GP. You're supposed to sort me out. Actually, they need to start taking responsibility, because it's what you fuel your body with has led to your body's ailments. As teenagers, children and teenagers, we think we're invincible because we're all
yes.
rakes. We've all got oodles of energy. We're doing everything, but we're eating rubbish. If we're drinking alcohol, we're not really drinking water. We're on the go 24/7. But sooner or later, at some point in your life, that catches up with you, and you realize that actually I can't keep doing those things anymore, because the body's starting to switch off and not be able to function properly. So if we don't do something about it, then it's just going to get worse, and it compounds. Whereas we should be educating our children and our teenagers how to look after themselves, because we're not invincible. It may feel like that at the time, but you're not invincible as a teenager. It does come to a point where it starts catching up with you. So yeah. But also going back to depression, there's a lot more of that going on, but there's a lot more processed foods being eaten. And around 70% of serotonin is made in the gut, and that's your feel-good factor. So if you're eating rubbish, you're not feeding up the microbiome in your gut that produce that serotonin. So that message isn't getting up to the brain. So your mood drops, you feel low, and then you eat more refined carbs. So you eat that pizza, you have that takeaway, because you think, oh, I can't really be bothered to stand and cook.
And you want that quick fix, that quick.
Want that quick fix,
Yeah.
yes. The dopamine hit from the extra sugar and the high fats and things like that. So you get that, but then that's just spiraling you, and then you feel worse the next day. And then because you feel worse, your mood is lower, your energy levels are lower, so you then go to more processed foods. If you're able to break that cycle, or get somebody to say, here's a nice colourful plate of vegetables, a healthy plate, and you eat that, you'll actually find that you feel much better just by eating that. But we're so out of eating well, because everything is a quick fix to move on to the next thing. We're always in a hurry to go on and do things. And it just needs time to slow down, enjoy the food that you eat good food, allow time for your body to digest it properly. Because we're in a rush, that affects your digestion. So a lot of people who are diagnosed with IBS and have bloating, they have pains in their stomach, they have constipation, they have diarrhea every time they eat. And they're not linking that to the environment that they're eating in, how they're eating it, whether they're eating at the desk or shoveling something in before they're running out the door to take the kids somewhere. All of that does have a big impact on the body, and we need to start taking notice of what the body's telling us, because the body talks to us on a daily basis. We're just so conditioned to switch off to it and go to the GP or run and get that paracetamol or ibuprofen or whatever it is to mask that pain or that upset, and not take accountability for our actions.
And that's it. And then obviously we suffer the consequences when we get into an age where, we're inundated with things, because we've got children now to look after. We've got a job that we're stuck in, whereas you mentioned being teenagers, and kind of starting it early as more of a prevention than waiting until you're sick. And definitely as a teenager myself, I remember I got called because I was quite slim, quite slender when I was young, and somebody called me really skinny, and that really affected me at the time. So some people think it's just when you're called fat that it can cause, I guess, a bit of trauma. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like I'm really skinny. Like, so I used to overeat. So if anyone had any leftovers, I would be like, oh, I'll have it. And I was very carby. So like bread, carbs, didn't really eat much vegetables or fruit. But then as the years have went by, ended up having an underactive thyroid, which I feel like I healed myself back a few years ago. But the doctors were just like, no, you need to be on tablets for life. But I was in denial, started researching, healed myself, so I'm not on any medication. But then, if all of those years of me abusing my body, it's took time, and it's taken time to reset, and I still go back down to those bad habits sometimes, which
Yeah.
I'm now more aware that I do it. But for somebody who isn't aware of all these things, it can be really hard because they don't even know that's that they are causing their own problem. Um,
I mean, when I sit down and go through a client's 5-day food history with them, and tell them what they're eating and what that actually is doing in their body, you can see that light bulb moment go off and go,
yeah.
oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was making me sick
Hmm.
by doing this, eating this, and eating that then. And you just, because you're not told that.
No.
But a lot of it is common sense. It's just, and then when I sit down with clients and they go, well, yeah, I do know that, but I've never got around to
Yeah.
doing it.
Hmm.
So that's why when you work with me, there's that accountability, and that can make all of the difference.
Hmm.
When you've got somebody checking in with you every couple of weeks saying, well, how did you get on?
Yeah.
You find challenging, and go, well, I didn't drink my water. I haven't been drinking my litre and a
Hmm.
half of water. I've managed 2 glasses. And we're saying, okay, then, well, what
Hmm.
can we do to change that and sort of hold them accountable?
Hmm.
And as these small changes come into play, you can see them starting to feel better. They're sitting in front of me and their skin's glowing. They've got a
Hmm.
sparkle back in their eyes. So it's amazing to see the transformations that's just through
Hmm.
nutrition can do.
Yeah.
Really.
So do you know how you mentioned like the detox thing?
Mhm.
If somebody who's obviously in a little bit poorly health, and can that be reversed just by switching your diet, or is there like detox protocols that you advise to do to get rid of the toxins first, or just by eating better, will that ultimately just help by changing your diet?
Changing your diet does help. Um, what you don't want to do is go in there and detox all these toxins, because what happens in your liver is that your liver starts releasing those, and then you feel ill because you've released those. So you've got to be very careful with this.
Hmm.
So you've got to take things slowly. You need to be under a healthcare professional to help you do that.
Hmm.
But once you get your liver working properly, then your liver can cope with a lot more. And it's not just your liver that helps to detox, your skin helps to detox, and it comes out in everywhere in your body. So if you're somebody who suffers with a lot of skin conditions, that's usually an indicator of something is not right in your gut, because your gut's trying to get, your body's trying to get rid of those
Hmm.
toxins through your skin, because it can't get rid of them elsewhere as well. So through
Hmm.
your kidneys, through your breathing, through your liver, all sorts. So
Hmm.
it's looking at the body holistically and not pinpointing on one thing, because everything is connected. So if you've
Hmm.
got those skin issues, you need to be looking at your gut, you need to be looking at your liver health.
Hmm.
There's lots of different factors in play, and that's where I come in to help see that overarching holistic way of looking at your body
Hmm.
and thinking, right, okay, I've just got a sore finger, I've got a fungal nail on my finger, I just need to address that. But why is it fungal? Why
Hmm.
have you got the fungus in your body? Why can't it fight it off? So we've got to do a deep dive and look at correcting things.
Hmm. Yeah. So do you deal with anybody who's got like mold or like parasite toxicity, or is it just purely, the hormones and the nutrition and just the general workings of your body, or do you go down that route as well?
Um, I'm busy doing a more protocol with a client at the moment. So no, it's not just hormones. The hormones are my speciality. However, I have clients who come to see me for other things. And sometimes it doesn't come to light when they initially come to see me. They don't realize that they've got problems with histamine or mold. And then we start doing some testing because we've done the foundational work and that hasn't corrected things and it's a left problem. So we've done some functional testing. And then that shows up that they've got mold inside. They've been breathing mold in from years ago, and that's never been cleared out of the body, and that's why they're presenting with the symptoms. So there's protocols we go down to clear with that. So I see people with all sorts of symptoms, and some of it can be years old, some of it is just recent.
Yeah,
So,
but I guess the way you do it by obviously looking at the history, looking at the diet, changing the diet. Then if that's not working, then that's a good point you're making. Then there's clearly something else, and that's where a test would then potentially say, actually, you've got mold toxicity, or you've got this. Yeah,
yes, and usually it's like playing detective. I
yeah,
can't sit with somebody saying, right, okay, if you do this protocol, that's going to resolve that, and then this one will resolve that.
yeah.
It doesn't work like that. The body is really complicated, but the body is really clever as well. So it overcompensates for areas that don't work as well. But when you start giving it the right nutrients, it starts to put the processes back together again. And it can take a long time because if you've been ill for 10 years with something, it can take a good couple of years to start undoing all that. But what we do is we sort of work at a level, see where that takes us and see what's remaining. Right, we'll deep dive into that and then sort of keep going down the different layers of this onion, if you like.
Yeah.
And we use the functional testing to get the answers and we don't guess at that point. We use the functional testing to get to know exactly what's driving things. I had a client who came to see me with histamine issues, and she thought it was all about a DO enzyme, and that's the enzyme that keeps histamine at bay in check. And it's turned out to be mold toxicity from years ago. So we're now looking at that. So you can come in to see me expecting it to be one thing, but actually when we do that deep dive and start putting things in place, we realize that isn't the root cause of it. It's something really deeper
Yeah.
from many, many years ago. And I think that's what we've lost. We've gained this art of pushing things, suppressing them with medication, and moving on. And we've got such busy lives, so we keep going, keep pushing through the pain. We don't realize how much damage that is actually doing to the
Yeah.
body. And it's not until you become older and it's 10 years later that you're exhausted, you're on the floor,
Yeah.
you're in severe pain, you've got severe migraines or breathing difficulties or really severe heavy periods which are debilitating. You can't go to work with them, you've got to be beside the toilet sort of every half an hour kind of thing. And at that point, people think, all right, I'm going to have to do something about it. But actually, you should start looking at the warning signs earlier and putting things right because it's much easier earlier on in the process. When people say to me, oh, I don't need to see a nutritionist, I'm fine. I've got this, but I'm fine. I'm going, well, are you really? And
Yeah.
I try to hold back and think, well, if we just sort this out, you wouldn't go on to develop this later and put this
Yeah.
prevention in place. But we're all of that mindset that we'll deal with it when it becomes a problem.
Yeah. And I think with the doctors as well, going back to them not having the right testing for like everything. So I did like a bioresonance test because I was going through the stage. I got my genetics tested. I went for bioresonance testing just to experience like different, I guess, service providers to see if they could help heal me and my health. And me bioresonance that I had histamine, high histamine, and mast cell activation. So I'd went to the doctors to get my thyroid panel checked and stuff, my kidneys and liver. And I'd asked them to the test for like the mast cell activation and other things. And they didn't test for any of that. So it's quite sad to know that some people might go to the doctors and they'll get the results and I've heard people say this, like, oh, all my results are normal, thinking that they've been tested for everything there is to possibly like be tested for. And what I don't think people realize as well is even if your range is like at the edge, they'll not flag that up. They'll put it as normal. So now I always get my results printed out, my thyroid levels. I get them printed out because I like to know where my range is, and I keep it.
Yeah.
And I've kept it in range. Sometimes it slightly went out of touch, but then it's went back in. But if it started to creep, then I know, right, something's going on. I need to get
Yeah.
this under control.
So when clients come to me, I ask to see copies of all their test results within the last 6 months. And the reason why I do that is because the range that the GP is looking at is different to the range I look at.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been to the doctors, you've had some tests, they've come back, and the GP says everything's fine, but you're sitting there thinking, but I still feel awful, I still feel unwell. And your GP says, but your test results are fine.
Yeah.
So when they're looking at a testing range, which is here, and that's where 70% of the population fallen into. So if you
Mm-hmm.
fall into that, that's normal. But what they don't let you know is that 70% of the population could all be feeling unwell. It's just where 70% of the population are falling into that
Yeah.
category. So that's a GP range. I look at this range. This is the optimal range. It can be
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit different from what the GP is looking at. So I want you to be not in just managing, I want you to be in
Yeah.
really good health. So I want to see nice, healthy ranges of your nutrients and your blood work, whereas the GPs are looking down here. So when we get you moved into the optimal range, that's when your symptoms starts disappearing
Mm-hmm.
because your body's been flooded with all the right nutrients. There's an abundance of these nutrients all of the time, not just once a week when you remember to take the iron supplement that GP prescribed you or whatever it
Yeah.
was. So that's why I look at those ranges differently, and it can make a huge difference
Mm-hmm.
if we start addressing those ranges.
Yeah. And what I've also learned, I don't know if you would agree or not, but that not all supplements are made equal, and that supplements you get have still got some harmful chemicals in there as well. And
Yeah,
people just think, oh, I'll just go, my local supermarket and pick up these cheap like supplements.
there's a reason why they're cheap. The first thing I like
Mhm.
to say, you can't out supplement a bad diet. Which a lot of people seem to be reaching for. I had one client come to me with on about 10 different supplements, but his diet was appalling, totally
Mhm.
processed, no real food in there at all. And he admitted that he was trying to out supplement his poor diet, give him
Yeah.
eat that pizza every day because he was taking a multi-nutrient. But the supplements in the supermarkets and even in the local stores, health food shops, aren't brilliant. They're cheap for a reason. They're full of excipients, so that's extra ingredients just to bulk them out to keep the price down.
Mhm.
A lot of the time, they're bulking agents that don't agree in the body.
Yeah.
So the supplements I use are professional grade. So
Mhm.
what it means is they're super clean. They've got good levels or high levels of the key ingredients that are going to make a difference, and the supplements work. So when you take the ones from the supermarket, you take them and you say, well, are they working? Go, I don't feel any different.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why you don't feel any different, because the levels of the nutrients in there are so low, they're not going to have any impact at all.
Mhm.
Things that I use are really high doses, they get the job done, they are more expensive, because I say you're taking for a lot less time,
Mhm.
because they get the job done more effectively, more efficiently, and you start
Yeah.
feeling healthy. And I use supplements as an add-on to your diet. So whilst you're getting your nutrition back in place, we'll get those supplements in there to make you feel better more quickly. But the idea is to tailor those supplements off and your diet take the place of
Take
those.
over. Mhm.
You know how to eat well. So when you come and see me, you know about what a healthy plate looks like. Because I
Mhm.
want you to be able to open your cupboard doors, open your fridge door and go, what shall I make? What have I got? Well, I've got a tin of chickpeas. I've got this, I've got that.
Yeah.
And if I put that, and that, I know that's going to be my healthy plate. I know it's got my healthy fats on there. I know it's got the right
Mhm.
protein. I know it's got my complex carbs on there. I know everything's covered, because some people just like to sort of have the ready processed foods, but they don't know actually what they're eating. They don't really know what's in there, and a lot of it is
Yeah.
rubbish. And because they might look and say, well, there's broccoli in there and they've got beans in there, but they're so heavily processed that sort of counteracts the nutrients value in that meal. And people don't understand what a healthy meal looks like.
Yeah.
So it's teaching you those sort of basic skills again. So when you work with me, you find out, I educate you on how to pull a healthy plate together so you can help educate the rest of your family. So I had one lady who came to see me and she says, my husband's loving the meals that we're eating and my kids are now asking for healthy foods. They don't want the foods that we used to eat. They're now onto well, where's the vegetables, ma'am? You know, can we have this? Can we have that, please? Can I have some more broccoli on my plate next time, please? So it has that snowball effect in the house, and that's what I love to see. Just everyone realizing how to eat well again, and then the kids have oodles of energy. You have oodles of energy. You're able to sleep properly. You know, you're not floored by your periods, or you're not floored by menopause. So it just makes a huge difference, and we're just so far from removed from saying that message.
Yeah. And what would you say about like intolerances if say, because I mean my friend both got a test and she was intolerant, she couldn't she couldn't actually eat garlic, whereas some people would say garlic's got benefits. Is it a case of she just can't eat it because there's something going on in our body that doesn't like it? Or is it just because of the way she's made up genetically? Is that a case with individuals as well, like with it where intolerances are involved?
Yes, it can be either. I mean, there are people who just can't tolerate some foods, and it's mild. It's not an allergy, but it's intolerance. However, you need to be careful when you're considering intolerance testing, because some companies will test and you'll come back with 50 different things to avoid, and it's just it's too overwhelming, and there's a reason why that's happening. And intolerances tend to happen with leaky gut. I don't know if you've heard of this expression. So that's when the tight junctions in the gut start to pull apart. And what happens is when you eat, the proteins drift through these leaky junctions and float in the bloodstream. And then the intolerance food test companies test the bloodstream and see these food particles. And it's usually the foods that you've been eating recently. And that's why there's so many in there, because that's what you're eating all the time. So intolerances can be brought up by that. So it's all about healing the gut. And once we've done a healing gut protocol, you might find that out of the 10 foods that you couldn't tolerate at all, maybe there's only one left that your body really can't help you with. So it's all about looking at that underlying cause, why you're intolerant to all those foods. What else is going on? What is your body telling you that you haven't picked up on yet?
And that makes like so much sense. So like in regards to like chemicals and stuff in different foods, we know processed foods, what would you say is the main ones to kind of stay clear of? And then also I was going to ask about organic, but I'll leave that for a second question. Is there any main foods that you go, like gluten, for example? Like, would you say specifically there's any foods people should probably consider not eating?
So the thing with gluten, a lot of people are intolerant to gluten, and it's the way that the processing of that wheat has changed over the years. And it's heavily processed, and it can, in some people, it can mimic inflammation, which is what it then stems to the gluten intolerance and things like that. Some people have celiac disease, which is slightly different, where it attacks the villi. So that's really important, never to eat any of that, because it really damages the body. But it's really difficult if you try to eat foods. If you go for whole foods in the supermarket or in the whatever shop you buy for, if you buy something that isn't processed, you're going to not have those chemicals included. And to get something in a sauce ready made, that's when they can be included. So if you buy a whole broccoli, a whole cauliflower, a whole cabbage, then there are no chemicals in there, other than the ones which have been used to grow it, which is why organic is preferable. Yes, it's more expensive. If you can afford it, buy as much organic version that you can. And the reason being is it hasn't been grown with the pesticides and the all the nasty chemicals on it. Also, the nutrients held in that, say, cabbage, are far greater than a standard cabbage, because that cabbage has grown naturally. It's had to improve its own phytonutrients to fight off the bugs and the beasts which are trying to sort of nibble away at it as it's grown. So it has more antioxidants in it. It has more phytonutrients in it. So if you do the taste test between an organic version, say an organic carrot and a normal carrot, the taste is miles apart. And that's one of my non-negotiables, is organic carrots. I will only buy organic carrots because the flavour is so different to a standard carrot. So there's a website that you can get where it's a clean 15 and the dirty dozen, where it changes each year based on sort of what the latest growing things have been. But it lists the clean 15 are the cleanest fruits and vegetables that have had the least amount of pesticides and things when they've grown. And then the dirty dozen is the ones, or the key ones, that sort of really, if you can afford to, avoid them and buy organic. So that list is quite good. If you can do nothing else, look up the clean 15 and the dirty dozen and try and buy as much as you can organic, and it'll let you know the ones which are okay, they're not as heavily processed.
I think I've seen that list before, actually. I can't remember what was on it, but I'm sure strawberries might have been on it. And I was like, oh no, because I think sometimes people find it hard to know where to go to get organic. And then even in the supermarket, when I look at organic, I always choose the organic. But then I think I've heard stories of like, this farm's organic, but the one next to it isn't, and the spray can still come over. But then you're still going to get the goodness. It's
Yes,
going to be a bit better, isn't it?
it's an improvement.
Yeah.
There are I order a box, an organic box. So I get my fruits and vegetables from somewhere that is purely organic, and I do it that way. It's whatever the purse strings will allow, and to do the best that you can afford. So that for everybody, that's different.
Yeah. So, well, obviously, thank you for coming on. But if we were to summarize this, how would you summarize it? Like, for me, I would probably say, obviously, if you're not feeling good, basically make sure you're doing the basic things like getting enough water, getting enough sleep, having an 80-20 diet where you're eating 80% of, good nutritious food, including the vegetables, fruit, organic if you can. I think that's basically it, isn't
Yes.
it? The basics of doing that. If they need accountability as well in help or investigation, then obviously they can reach out to you as well. And I'll put all of your links in the description as well, so people can actually message if they want to chat, ask more information and stuff as well. But would you sum it like that, or have I missed anything out?
Oh no, I mean, there's so much noise going on in social media. Do this
I
helps.
know.
It really, and it may work for them, but it might not work for you, because your
Yeah.
body is your body and it's individual. So when you work with me, I look at you individually, see what's going on. But the basics are, go back to eating good whole foods. Leave the process behind. Eat organic if you can afford it. If you can't, still go for whole foods, wash them well, stay away from the process, adding the sauces, things like that. Get your hydration, and water is crucial for your body. Movement is crucial for your body. Sleep is crucial for your body. Without sleep, everything else goes to pot.
Yeah. And if somebody said they can't sleep, because I've got one person actually at the minute, he's suffering from insomnia, that could be directly linked to the
So
gut, isn't it?
yes, yeah, I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of my clients come to me say that, they have real problems sleeping. but sometimes that's because of the foods that they eat,
Hmm.
their bedtime routine, the blood sugar roller coaster that they're stuck on, because
Hmm.
that can wake you up through the night. There's all sorts of reasons that would affect your sleep. So again, seek help from a healthcare professional, because once that's sorted, your life will transform. Everything
Hmm.
falls into place with sleep.
Yeah.
It's quite fundamental.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people, like especially people I know, don't get that sleep. Like after they've had the busy days, then they want to stay up to kind of do have a bit of them time, like watching a movie, whatever, blue light, and then they're back up early because they've got kids, they've got school run, they've got work. So it's just making the time, isn't it? Going to bed early, turn your phone off as well.
Yeah, it's breaking that
Sacrificing.
cycle. Once you can break that cycle, you'll realize how much better you feel for it. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And do you know what? And I hope loads of people watch this because I think you've like covered quite a bit. And
Yes.
but it's been nice because I think some things people might go, oh, well, I knew that, like you said earlier on, but they're not doing it. And it's
Mm,
kind of sharing and raising awareness of the importance of this is your life, your health. The doctor ain't going to fix it for you. You
mm,
kind of need to look at what you're doing. And if you can't do it yourself, then obviously get help from somebody like yourself who can kind of guide them through the process and
mm.
be that accountability partner as well. So, but thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome. A lovely chat.
No,
Thank you for having
you
me.
too. You too.